Morning.
Morning,
Heavens,
stranger.
heavens above, three of us. Heavens above, three of us again. You sure it's not just a picture there that has been put up to?
No, I actually move and talk and everything.
Oh,
That has never been a problem, as far as I'm aware. There we are.
it's taking you less than 10 seconds to insult her, David.
All right. Don't hang around. I've got a lot of time this morning. Bound to be a school meeting for you, Chris. Like last week, you had to dash off. I've got
school assembly in an hour's time.
I've got six funerals to arrange, so I'm going to get on with it.
No one needs an hour of rev chat.
No.
No one does.
No.
6 funerals to arrange, David. Do you not need to delegate a couple?
Well, no, they've only just all started flooding in, so I've got to look. I mean, the problem is most of them put them on Thursdays or Fridays, and after you can't have Fridays, so tough luck. I mean, 3 of the church members anyway. You know, Wendy and what's her name, Marjorie, and there's another lady who's a church member. One's only Ash's burial up at of somebody, but David did the funeral, so I'll get him to do the burial of the ashes.
Anyway, we probably don't need to talk about our funeral admin on rev chat. That's perhaps not appropriate.
It goes on. No, it's very lovely. It's good funeral arrangement. It's all has to go. No weddings though. Very few weddings coming in.
Well, and have we got any weddings booked for the coronation date? I guess that's the question.
First day of the cricket season in Dorset. So yes, it's yeah.
Oh, I haven't looked at that. What date was the
coronation? Is the 6th of May, according to this week's announcement, which is a Saturday.
I did see it there yesterday.
Yes, 6th of May. We've got a possible wedding blessing put over from last year, but I've got to recontact the person. He may not want it anymore.
I don't have a wedding booked for the 6th of May next year.
And don't book one for the 9th, 10th or 11th of June either.
No. It's when the Archbishop is coming on mission to the Diocese of Salisbury.
And I've booked him into your parishes, Chris.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Hurrah!
Hurrah! Hey, that means everybody in my parish is going to come to church to see the Archbishop.
He doesn't want to go to churches, Chris. He wants to be in the
community. Yeah, probably. Mind you, it might be a case of like that bishop whose name I can never remember, who used to say when we talked about declining congregations, he'd go, but it's always loads of people whenever I go to church.
Yeah, Bishop Ed of Ramsbury.
That was it. Bishop Ed.
He couldn't understand what all the fuss was about because he went to so-and-so church in somewhere on Christmas Eve for carol service, and the church was full, standing outside. He even wrote it in that magazine, remember, Country Life or something, Country Living or Country People of Wiltshire.
Well, I remember we did, when I was a curate and the bishop was coming, we actually sat down and said, look, why don't we take him to the smallest village with the smallest congregation without really telling anybody else so that he gets to feel what rural ministry is really like?
Did your plan work?
No.
People found out and came, flocked, indeed.
No, I think the powers that be didn't have the bottle to do it. Didn't have the persistence in prayer to be confident to do it. If we're going to jump forward then later on,
weren't faithful enough, weren't just persistent enough.
I went to Malplash for their PCC meeting last night, and the church, I've never seen it so clean in my life.
Well, that's because they've got a big old service coming up on Sunday.
The Malplash show, and they cleaned it all for the bishop, of course, who's not coming because she's. They changed the date without asking us, and she can't come to the change date. So, but no, they didn't do it for the bishop. They did it for the show. But yeah, they had a company, cleaned it all beautifully. It looks fantastic.
Wow. Excellent.
You could almost eat your food. No, you couldn't. No.
Off the carpet.
Yeah. It looks good. And,
is it clean enough to play badminton still?
Badminton net had to go because of the tables and the food.
Oh.
There you go.
For the time being, they'll go back up again though. They'll go back up, but at the moment it's gone. Everything's ready. We ticked them all off the list. lighting, toileting, car parking.
Brilliant.
Oh yes,
Well done, Mel Plash.
Service sheet, all done. They've done. I have to be honest, the Mel Plash show have stepped up. They promised us a lot, and they've given us a lot.
Brilliant.
They've done a beautiful service sheet for us. They're putting up a large display of the shows over the years at the back of the church, and they're providing food and stuff, and they've done a great job. Well done, Mel Plash show.
Indeed, well done them. Well, so they've been persistent for 175 years, haven't they?
175 years, Mel Plash agricultural shows.
That's a very long time. That's like proper Victorian times, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, David Sherlock didn't remember the first one. I think he could have remembered the third, but he was okay. No, it is a very long time, Joe. Yeah, it
Really
is.
long. Yeah.
It is. It's quite interesting because the foundation stone for the church was laid on the 28th of May, 175 years ago.
Wow.
You know what the size of the church is, and it's, whatever. But it was actually finally opened only 17 months later.
Wow. Quick, isn't it?
Yeah.
They don't manage to get a Grand Designs house up in 17 months sometimes.
No, sure. But perhaps there weren't any faculties and DACs around in those days to, or planners.
Oh, I'm loving the arches at the moment.
Yeah.
Are either of you archers listed?
No.
No, I tried to listen on holiday. I put it on for the omnibus on the Sunday morning, and fell asleep at the poolside. I was so bored.
Oh, so rude. It's just brilliant. But yeah, they've got a wonderful storyline going on about a new stained glass window and the faculty program process.
Sure.
It's beautifully done, completely accurate. And so clearly whoever's writing these scripts knows the inside of the DAC.
I lost the children. The elderly lady who's gone off to be a pioneer minister went off to Sunderland or somewhere.
She did, Sheila. Sheila's gone off to Sunderland to be a pioneer.
Off to Sunderland.
See, there's definitely some Church of England influence in this story.
Obviously, the church in Worcestershire or wherever it's based didn't need pioneers. They sent her to Sunderland.
Yeah, she's had quite a bizarre route to ordination. She's not ordained yet, so
No.
who knows whether that will happen, but there we are.
However, I hadn't listened to it for nearly 4 years, I don't think. We stopped listening to it regularly because I've never been of an evening and I don't have a chance on a Sunday, although playback, of course, is now available. But I gave up listening, and actually nothing had changed, a bit like EastEnders, from when you could just pick it up from 4 years ago. Because in EastEnders, Phil has killed somebody for the 20th time and still got away with it. And, so-and-so's having an affair with somebody else, and they're all going to be swearing at each other. It doesn't matter whether you watch it 5 years ago or today, it's the same. And I found I knew all that was going on. Old, what's his name, the Scottish chap, and then the pregnant archer child, and it all goes on, doesn't it?
So is all your churches completely changed, or are they the same as they were 5 years ago?
Have our churches changed? Some of them have changed a bit. Some of them are a bit tidier than they were. Some of them a bit more organised than they were. Some have completely new heating systems.
So we have to got a proper shed toilet. They didn't have 5 years ago.
Beaminster have got all their new heating and solar panels. Congregation-wise, probably roughly stable. A few up and a few down, I'd say. What do you think?
Roughly the same, I think. Well, I mean, they must be roughly the same because the parish share has stayed roughly the same over 5 years. So they're going to be fairly whatever.
Some new questions, though. People have come to faith in the last 5 years, so that's good. So growth in terms of faith, which is good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I should be talking to the bishop. Well, not talking to, but when I have my bit in the debate on Saturday Bishop's Council, that's what I should be raising. That, as I've raised many times, what are we actually counting? Are we just counting Sundays, or are we counting other aspects of growth in faith as well? And they never want to answer that, of course.
When we did our confirmation a couple of weeks ago, I counted back. We've done 52 confirmations in the 10 years I've been here. So, an average of 5 a year, isn't it?
That's good.
All right. we're keeping. It probably doesn't keep pace with the number of. It certainly doesn't keep pace with the number of funerals we do a year.
No, they've been up this year, but hopefully they'll go down next year. Well, I think you can't have any doctors. If they kept on dying at the number they've died this year, Beaminster wouldn't exist in 3 years' time.
That's very true.
So we've got to be very careful. You have to be very, very careful. And yeah, baptisms. I think you seem to have done a lot of baptism this year, Joe.
Yeah, we have got 2 more. Oh, that reminds me, I've got another one on Sunday.
So have I.
Panic. I've just remembered the thing I haven't done. There we are. Anyway, should we do Rev Chat while I remind myself to go and sort out the baptism certificates?
Yeah, it'll be done. It'll be done. Anne's getting mine done. Anyway, let's have a pause and then one of us can read, can't we, Chris?
Is that long enough pause, David?
That'll do.
I guess I'm volunteered to read from Luke chapter 18.
Oh, thank you, Chris. That's lovely.
So then Jesus told them a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. He said, "In a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor had respect for people. In that city there was a widow who kept coming to him and saying, 'Grant me justice against my opponent.' For a while he refused, but later he said to himself, 'Though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice, so that she may not wear me out by continually coming.' And the Lord said, 'Listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God grant justice to his chosen ones who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long in helping them? I tell you, he will quickly grant justice to them. And yet, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?'"
Persistence.
I thought it was quite interesting. The very first verse I thought was quite different than other parables we get, because normally Jesus tells us a parable. Here we get, "I'm telling you a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart." So he's actually telling us what this parable is about before he tells us the parable.
Yeah. And I think we probably can't equate God with the unjust judge, because God is not an unjust judge.
No, but
so it's just a judge and a widow, isn't it? It's just because sometimes we try and work out who is who in the parable. Maybe it's just a faithless judge and a.
Well, I think I read it as, if you've got an unjust judge and somebody who's not a brilliant judge, well, he's going to grant her justice because she keeps on. How much more will a good one do it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Just like, how much more would a good priest do something good in a parish?
Oh, don't equate it with, oh dear. Yes, maybe.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
No, I think that's an interesting one. Yes.
No, you have to work out what you mean by good.
Oh.
Well, that's true.
That's probably going off subject, David.
No, I'm just responding to what you said, Chris. No problem.
I guess that verse 4 is not going to be good for a role description for a priest. "Though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone," says the unjust judge. Yes. Yeah, because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice.
We also get it. Is it the end of the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus says, when his son asks for something and gives them a snake instead? And
yeah.
Similar to that, isn't it?
It is.
Mm.
Yeah.
I was likening this an awful lot on my previous sermons to elite. I'll say elite athletes, because you don't get to become an elite athlete without training and training and training and training. And on the news this morning, there was this German footballer who moved from Germany to join Chelsea football team's youth academy at the age of 7.
My goodness.
And he's now tipped to be the next world superstar in football. Now he's 18. And I thought, well, at 7 years old, to move from one country to another, to dedicate and focus your effort to football training. That's the length that guy is going to become a superstar in football.
Mm-hmm.
How does that relate to our faith? Even as a priest, how do our prayers match that sort of level of devotion to training and to praying? And Jesus hears a parable about their need, our need to pray always and not to lose heart.
See, I think it lingers on a bit from last week's, doesn't it, where the disciples asked Jesus to give them more faith. And I kind of landed on the fact that actually it's not more faith you need, it's greater faith in a God that loves you and cares for you and is always there. And it's back to how do we pray? How do we have more faith? How do we pray more? Can you pray too much? Are you ever going to reach enough prayer? And what you do is prayer when you do it. And do you ever listen to do you ever listen to what God is saying? Because we're very good at talking. We're very good at talking, but do we listen to God? Because we know that God delights, doesn't he, in giving gifts and things to us all. It's how we use what he gives us and what we do with it. But,
it's also hard for people who feel that they haven't had justice granted to them. I'm thinking about the women in Iran at the moment who are risking, or young women the age of my daughter, who are risking their lives protesting for their human rights.
Yeah.
And they're kind of living that parable at the moment. They're just having to keep going on and on and on and on, and because the unjust judge is in charge in that country. And so we pray for those who have perseverance in their journey towards justice. And the same with the people who had to take that terrible conspiracy theorist chap in the States to court over saying that Sandy Hook was a lie. And they've had to, and I heard the man on the news today as being, and he said, it is wrong, he said, that telling the truth has been so hard and has been so scary, it's made me so full of fear. It's taken so long for for them to have justice against somebody who's just lying and making up stuff. It's tough if you're persisting, actually physically persisting in justice to get justice. I do pray for people who are in that situation.
In that same interview, though, today, I mean, the chap himself had admitted he realised what he was saying was wrong, but he didn't apologise for it. And of course, whilst you can apologise for creating a load of nonsense like that, it doesn't take away the hurt that you caused in the first place, does it?
No, and he didn't do it by mistake.
No, I'm just saying, but
he's a dreadful, nasty man. But there we are.
It doesn't, and that's why the money was awarded. Because if he apologised and people said, right, oh, thanks, we accept your apology, we don't need any money. But the fact is that he's having to pay up for the hurt he caused by saying what he's done. Because just because you apologise doesn't take away the hurt, and that's something about seeking forgiveness of sins, isn't it? God forgives us. But he only forgives us on a kind of understanding that we're not going to keep on doing it time and time again just because we think we can go to him and ask him to forgive us as often as we want. And though, it was interesting. I read an article in the Sunday Times, I think it must have been the Times on Sunday, about the situation as you were talking about with the young girls fighting for justice. And of course, the people in that country, the unjust judge, as you called him, he justifies what he's doing by saying, actually, this is the culture of our faith and our religion, and they know they shouldn't do it. Now, I'm not for 1 second saying he's right or he's wrong, but he would say to us, what right have you got to tell me what is right in my culture or whatever. And we think it's wrong, and I agree with you entirely. You know, what's going on is wrong. But to them, he's justifying it by saying they know what the rules are.
But that's no justice, is it? Because what they're actually worrying about is choice. So it's not so, because that's the whole thing about religious authority, is we're given choice, isn't it?
But you don't get choice in those countries, and that's where the problem begins in the first place, do you? Isn't it? That's where the problem begins.
But that's the injustice, and that's the thing for us as religious leaders, because we hold some authority in the same way that the religious authorities in other countries do. But one thing that we've got to be very aware of, I think, is that this is all about choice.
But they don't have that choice because that's within their culture where they are, but
still no justification.
It doesn't make it right here, so long as we don't start following it. I don't know how you stop people who say this is what we do. It isn't just to us because of the. No,
I don't think it's just unjust to us. I think it's unjust. Full stop. I don't think there is another side to that.
But we're making that decision based on what we are used to, as opposed to what they're used to.
So human rights say that we should have a choice and freedom to worship, and freedom to not worship, presumably.
Yeah, but
I don't agree that. I don't agree with you on that one.
They don't sign up to human rights, though, do they? That's the problem.
No, and that's the problem.
Yeah,
but it doesn't mean that what they're doing is right, to my mind.
I agree entirely. I agree 100% with you. But within their I don't want to say culture, but within their rules, it doesn't make it right to us, and it isn't right to them. And I stand up for the young girls and the women and men out there as well who are putting their lives at potential risk because it's unjust. But we know that God isn't unjust, and that's where they're falling down, because you can't base their religious decisions on a God they say is allowing that, because God is God and doesn't allow it. In my understanding, I don't know. Perhaps I'm wrong, Chris.
I was listening quite interestingly. I think the division is, yes, as Joe says, we're right. Everybody must have a right to choose, and we're free to choose to follow a religion or not, and whichever religion. But as Joe points out, actually, that religion that doesn't allow women to do certain things and issues severe punishments for not quite following their rules of religion, the rules of their religion don't match a good and just God that they claim to worship. But I think the thing that's been removed is, whilst they disagree with it and say actually this human rights is unjust, they haven't got the freedom to say we're not going to follow your religion anymore because we don't agree with your religious morals, and therefore we're going to follow a different version of Islam that we think is more just.
Yeah.
And that's where their lack of freedom goes.
Yeah.
But it does. But they still must be free to be able to follow the religious rules of the religion they choose to follow. And
it's exactly the same, as we see in the Gospels when Jesus is challenging the Pharisees, and he's suggesting to them that, living God's way is bigger than the rules that they have made it into, and that actually love and forgiveness and grace take us beyond just a set of guidelines. And in the same way, I know that as a woman of faith, if I sat down with a very extreme right-wing evangelical Christian from the United States, we might actually find it quite hard to find places of commonality, common ground, even though we are of the same faith, because the way we interpret that faith is so completely different, despite starting from the same origins of Jesus Christ is the Son of God who died and rose again for us. So it's when we have these conversations, we have to be really careful that we're not labeling things about their religion. Well, actually, it's one expression of Islam, isn't it, that is oppressing those people. And there are plenty of imams who would come and have a conversation with us. Now, that would be a good rev chat. Who would say that, my understanding of Islam is not the same as the religious authorities in Iran.
It's really interesting because on Saturday, when I was driving to the Archdeaconry Day, I picked up the good rector of St Abbas to take him with me. And that was good. We had a long chat, and he was telling me he'd been to see the imam of the new Muslim church or gathering in Dorchester. They're building a mosque behind the keep, if you know what I mean, at the top of town. Yeah. And he went to see them. He went to see me because he felt there was discussion, it's good to have discussions across Dorchester Deanery. And the imam was telling them that he's got two groups of Christians. They're Muslim. They've got a great gathering yet, but what they have got is two groups. They're either highly trained specialist doctors from the hospital who come over from Egypt, or they're burger flippers, mainly from Turkish type of backgrounds. But of course, at the end of every prayer session there, he makes the men, because of course the women are sent off somewhere else, but he makes the men, whatever they are, burger flipper, eye consultant, your brain surgeon, whatever, he makes them stand shoulder to shoulder, literally, so their feet and their shoulders are touching each other, because all are one in Allah. There we are. What a wonderful story.
That's a great story.
Yeah, and Jonathan was saying he was very moved by that conversation, because the chap wasn't saying, you Christians or whatever. He was saying, look, we're here to support and love each other and to work together for the good of our community. And that's absolutely right. And I heard on Sunday, I don't know if any of you heard it, I was listening to the programme on Radio 4, which I think starts at 7. And they were interviewing a Jewish rabbi from Milton Keynes. Now, he's very progressive. He's fairly modern, a fresh expression of Jewishness or whatever, I'm not quite sure. And he was saying that his particular synagogue welcome anybody, because what they want to do is they want to try and help those who are Jewish, male or female, that are married to a non-Jewish partner, still to be able to be part, but also for their family to be with them rather than alone. But they don't expect the partner to become Jewish or to sign up. And it was interesting to hear him talk about the battle he'd had with some of the other rabbis because they said, no, that's not what you do, that's all wrong. And he's saying, no, it's not, it's right. We can't separate or split families. We don't encourage them. There's no proselytizing or whatever you'd call it, but they're welcome to come and to be part of the gathering that we have. And I thought that was a very interesting.
Yeah. And that's about justice again, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And interesting, that story about the imam, because it's wonderful to see that kind of a brotherhood of equality despite different backgrounds. And that's wonderful to celebrate. Of course, what I'm going to say, because it would be fabulous to think that the women were there too.
Well,
integrated into that commonality of we are all one, not just a brotherhood together, but, siblings together in God. But, I understand.
And that's the next step. The very fact that, whether you're an eye surgeon or a burger flipper you want, the next step has got to be. And that, who knows? We got enough problems of unjustness in the Church of England. I mean, how long has it been? 24 years since women were ordained, or 25 years now?
It's 28. And injustice for, there's been published the second report into child abuse in the Church of England last week. Yeah. Justice for the victims of abuse that's happened within the church. There's a lot of injustice in our world.
Yeah.
And our persistence in prayer, but also our persistence in transforming the unjust societies we live in is important.
Well, I was almost very unjust the other day. I'll own up, dear viewer, because on Saturday I put another bucket of apples out for people to take, because we can't cope with the number of apples because there's so many of them. Everyone's
inundated this year,
This year. So I put them out, and that was fine. And one or two people I thought wander past and take a few for their, applesauce or crumble or whatever for Sunday. And then I didn't see, but somebody else did and called me. A gang of the well-brought up and educated youths of Beaminster decided to steal the bucket because they took it and didn't return it. So that's stealing in my understanding. And then to start throwing them, not just at each other, but at people's front doors and the two cars that were parked down the road. So I went after them when I was rang from a lady in Glebe Court. And I said, what on earth are you doing? I said, if you'll take the apples, take them. Not a problem, make you sick because they're not ripe enough to eat, but there we are. Why are you damaging people's property? And the answer I got from one young educated youth of town was, well, I won't use your words, but it began with an F and ended in an F. We can do what we want. We don't need you to tell us what we can't do. And I was just about to reply to that interestingly, when I thought, no, I meant to love this child. Yeah, I meant to love this child. And but how do you respond to that? Yeah, there is no response, is there?
No, other than, he was damaging, well, I'm assuming it's a boy, that's terrible, isn't it? They were damaging property potentially.
The person who used the language and spoke to me was a boy. There were two females with them as well, but they're all just a gang that roam around, and they're stupid and not they're well educated. But the parents are proud of them, so that's all that matters.
I'm not sure that they would be, though. And there's definitely some justice in there.
Yeah.
They ought to be tidying up and returning the bucket and picking the apples, probably.
The buckets that have never been returned, so we've had to put out a larger flower pot now. But people are still enjoying apples, I hope. Please take an apple. If you're passing the rectory, take some or ring us and we'll take them off the tree for you. There we are. So justice. God is just. That is what we've come down to the understanding of. Even if society isn't just, God is just always.
Well, on that note, that's the end. I clearly make us ramble more. It was a bit long.
We've got 3 people's opinions instead of 2.
Well, true. Maybe it's better. Maybe 2 are better than 3.
Now, Christopher, anyway. You are away next week, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Christopher is away. Are you away all week or just on Thursday?
I'm going away Wednesday afternoon and coming back Friday afternoon.
Lovely. Good. Golfing, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
Diocese and golfing?
Yes.
So it's work. It's work.
With Anthony Mackerel-Wood.
Work. What you two like?
It is diocese. No,
it's like diocesan cricket. That's work too, isn't it?
I cannot class it as work.
It's diocesan, diocesan duty. You're representing the diocese, or you may be even representing the Church of England, for all I know. I don't know if you've been promoted into that sphere yet.
I've been invited.
Ooh.
But the cost of paying for the Church of England is, because you're going away for 3 nights.
To Sweden
or wherever. I don't know how any clergy persons afford it.
Because they're archdeacons. Most of them. Sorry, archdeacons.
Might be a grant for you, Chris, somewhere. Love a whip round.
I think that might get loads of feedback from our dear viewers of Rev Chat saying, shouldn't the grants go a little bit more to needy?
Absolutely. Needy people, rather than paying for you to go to Sweden to play.
Don't worry, Chris, if you can't afford to go, you can apply to our hardship fund. I'll give you a price. Well, there we are. So, Divya, just before we do go, thank you very much for those who have supported my £10, whatever. It now stands at the grand total, because I had a wonderful donation from a person in Broad Windsor, it happened the other night. And the grand total now stands at £975.
Wow. Praise the Lord.
But it isn't as good as our great mate at the Lantern Church, Chris, you would have heard this. The vicar of the Lantern Church changed his £10 from the bishop into £10 worth of pennies. And then he asked his congregation to buy a penny for £10. And when I heard on Saturday, he'd raised £9,876. Oh. What a gesture, eh? Fantastic. Well done, Lantern Church. I can't argue about it. We know.
Does that mean they've got 986 people in their church?
Well, no, some people might have bought 5 or 10 coins for all I know. I didn't ask you,
Oh,
but anyway, so thank you very much for supporting this fund. And I'm sure in the coming weeks we'll start to have people who may need support and help. And so thank you. There we are. You can follow us, as you know, because I'm going to get this right for once. You can follow us on the Egerton to Colmers Facebook page, TikTok, Instagram. You can follow the Beaminster Team on everything that's going in the world, because we're there. Yeah. I'm even trying to get Harry to put you up on these automatic bus stops that you see. You know, the next rev chat will be at 7:35 on Thursday or whatever. So there we are. So follow us. Lovely to see you. Thank you all very, very much. Joe, it's been great that you're back with us. Are you here next Thursday to join me?
I can't remember. I'll have a look in a minute. Probably.
Good.
All right then.
If not, I'll talk to myself.
No, we can have to do a quickie. I've got Mountjoy Harvest Festival at 10.
Can you rephrase that, please?
Well,
yeah, it could be a
short one.
Short version, yes.
Rather than a quickie.
Yeah, I'd have to be very careful. That could be a safeguarding issue.
It could. Yeah. And off we go. See you all soon.
Bye.